Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 19 of Red Brick Recap. We've got a ton to talk about this week, a lot of big news in the Miami community. I'm joined once again by my co-host, Ted Brennan. Ted, how are we doing today?
Oh, I'm doing great. How are you, my friend?
Oh, not too bad. Just the constant cycle of getting back into school and getting routine back. I feel like we say it every time we jump on here, but grad school's tough. It is hard, and yeah, it's kind of kicking my butt right now.
Yeah, I hear you with that. This is like probably first time that I'm doing more than just one grad course at a time. Or let me rephrase it, more than just like slash courses. I've taken a couple at a time, but true grad courses are they're a little rough. It's a big step up.
It's definitely a step up. This is semester number 2 for me, and I'm still my head's still spinning after week 1, and it's only syllabus week. So going to be a long semester, but here we are. Obviously, a lot of big news in the Miami community. Let's jump right in with what came out about an hour ago. Travis Steele, big extension announced today. Apparently, the contract was signed back in November, but it only got announced today. 6-year extension through the end of the 2031-32 season, I believe. In my opinion, it makes total sense. It's a great move for Miami. This guy has changed the way this program is perceived, not only around Oxford, but nationwide. I mean, we're top 50 in, I think, like 5 or 6 different offensive categories. It's one of the most exciting teams that Miami's had probably in the last 20 years. So I think it makes a ton of sense to lock him up long term. He's completely transformed how this team is perceived around the country. So I think it's a great move for Miami.
Yeah, absolutely. The other night you and I were both able to be in that press conference, and he kind of mentioned something that I don't know how many people caught, but he used a metaphor about it takes time to build a program, right? You can't just. It takes a lot of time to knock down a program. It's really quick to knock down a program. It takes a lot of time to build it back up. And he mentioned him and his wife were doing that with a house currently, right? He said, they bought a house, they knocked it down, and they're going to build it back up, and it's going to take years to build it back up, right? And I was sitting there, and I go, maybe I guess he thinks he's going to be around for a while, or maybe he's in talks for signing an extension. And obviously now that we know he signed an extension in November, just announced now, and I mean, there's no reason that he shouldn't have had this contract. This is incredible for Miami basketball. He's only in year 3 of the original 5-year deal. He's now going till 31, 32. I think the season's. He'll be around for the new arena. Honestly, kind of call it the house that Steele built, right? I mean,
we're still early in the Steele era, but I mean, you look at where we were in year 1, where I think it was 12-22 was the final record, with not a ton of exciting basketball. Year 2 was better, and obviously they made the berth in the MAC tournament and got up to Cleveland, but still, it was definitely not what you could tell that he was like. I don't want to say frustrated, but it was not the level that he wanted to get to. Year 3, we're seeing the vision that Steele has for this program, where it's fast-paced, it's free-flowing offense, it's tough defense, athletic guys all over the floor. I mean, you look at 1 through 5, and they can guard positions 1 through 5, and all probably give you 15 points a night. This is the type of team that Steele has said from day 1 that he wanted to build. And he said it in press conferences and interviews, too, that I've seen, where he's always been talking to David Saylor, our athletic director, about year 3. Year 3 is the year where he's going to show what he's capable of with this program. And I think this was the absolute best case scenario that I envisioned for this season. Like, I think if you told me when we started talking about this team 2 months ago that we'd be 15-5, I probably wouldn't believe you. But after watching this team, it's pretty clear to see why they're as good as they are.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Like, they were picked to finish 6th in the MAC in the preseason polls, and currently they are the number 2 seed in the MAC tournament. And like you said, I think it's best case scenario for these guys. Like, I don't think either of us would have said coming in like, oh, this is a MAC title contending team, right? I think we both had our hopes for it, but I don't think that we would have fully, put our seal on MAC title run. And like you said, there's been steady improvement each year. In his first year, they snuck into the MAC tournament, right? With a really good, not a really good conference record, but they had a good conference record, and they were able to sneak in and kind of backdoor it in. And then they're the 8th seed, and then the next year they're the 7th seed. and you're telling me they can finish as high as, there's still a shot at the first seed overall. I mean, Akron would have to lose 2 games, and Miami would have to make sure that they don't lose any more games for that to happen. But still, I mean, just incredible, incredible progress. And I mean, you want to talk about hitting on all of your transfers this season. I mean, every transfer that they've brought in has been a hit, right? I mean, Cam Kraft, we talk about him at length. Peter Suter, I mean, coming from Bellarmine, like, look, when they first signed him, I didn't know too much about him. I didn't know what to expect from him. And now he's one of my favorite players to watch on this team. Antoine Woolfolk, I had so much hope for him going into this season, and he is living up to that expectation. And even Dan Lewis, I know he doesn't play a whole lot or he play as much as he wants, but they call him Grandpa on the team for a reason, right? He's got that wisdom. He's a really, really good locker room presence, and he's just a great guy to have around.
Yeah, 100%. I think you brought up a good point with the transfer portal. I think it's also Steele is everything you want out of a mid-major coach right now, where has this acumen of getting high-level transfers into the program with guys like Suter, Kraft. I mean, even think about last year with Hunter and Boltman, who became the stars of the show. He's shown he can navigate the transfer portal. He's also brought in a ton of guys from high school who have been high-level contributors, at least in the last 2 years. You look at the sophomore class right now of Elmer, Cooper, Ipsaro, and Potter all playing meaningful minutes out of that like Fab Five we've talked about going into the season. And Kotecki too, like played some meaningful minutes this year too, and has been good so far. So, I mean, you look at those 5 guys, and not to mention you have Skaljak and Byers this year, who have both grown into being legitimate contributors on a very good program in a very tough conference. They're both playing way above their age, and those guys were huge gets for Steele. I mean, you have this mix of being able to get guys through the portal and being able to develop talent out of high school that I think is very, very rare to find in a coach, where you kind of either have the portal or you have high school. And it's very rare to find a guy who can navigate both of those fields very well the way that Steele does. And looking at the class coming in, I mean, you've got LaShawn Stowers coming out of Peoria in Illinois. He's a Mr. Basketball contender, and that title has a lot of weight in that state. I mean, you have guys like EJ Liddell who have won it. That's the only one that's coming to mind right now. But I mean, that's an All-American at Ohio State and an NBA player right now. And you've got a guy in contention for that award. You got Trey Perry from our local area coming out of like the Cincinnati area. He's averaging over 20 points per game for Lakota East right now. So, I mean, it's a track record that's proven to work for him, and it's proven to be sustainable. So I think it makes a lot of sense for them to be optimistic and kind of lock in this talent pool for the next 6 years.
And I mean, you bring up LaShawn Spurs and Trey Perry, former guest of the show. That's not even to mention Justin Kirby. He's a McDonald's All-American Game nominee. Tyler Robbins, he just had a 2020 night the other night. I mean, that's a big center to get. I mean, that's big. And then Kyle Watts, like, this is a kid who just started playing high-level basketball like 3 years ago. I mean, he only started playing as like a sophomore or junior, if I remember correctly, and now he's going to go play college basketball after a PG year. I mean, that's something right there, right? Kyle Waltz. I mean, he's going to come in a year older than the rest of the freshmen. Like, that's huge, right? And I mean, this is exactly what Steele was brought here to do, right? He was brought here to recruit, and he was brought here to get talent. And now that he's really planting his feet here, I think Miami basketball is going to be a good MAC team to a great MAC team for years to come, and that's exactly what you want to see. And I mean, we could sit here for the whole hour and talk about Travis Steele if we wanted to, because he's just completely flipped the culture on its head. And hopefully, the Miami students, they start to realize that, right? Like this is a new era for Miami basketball.
Yeah, I remember, I think it was my junior year. I did an interview with Steele, like right after he got hired, and I kind of asked him, like, this is a program that has a lot of history. This is a program that has a lot of prestige. What are the steps you have to take to get back to that level, get back to this kind of podium that Miami had been on in like the late 90s, early 2000s? And his message was clear, is like, get the students involved, get the community involved with this team. And I think we kind of saw that, or like a inkling of that on Tuesday night, because I don't know about you, that was the best student turnout I'd seen in at least the last 2 years, probably in my Miami time, dating back to sophomore year against Cincinnati. Like, that new student section, which I'll talk about here in a second, we can move that up the docket, was probably 85% full for a Tuesday night during Greek life's rush period is a massive achievement for this program that really hasn't seen that level of engagement, at least since we've been here.
Yeah, and I mean, let's talk about the student section for a second because Brick just made a really big announcement the other day. They want people to go to that Ohio game, the men's game. I know they're also trying to push for the women's game as well, but I know they made a big thing about the men's game. They are going to have like a quote unquote after party at Brick, so they're going to essentially be telling people go to the game, come back, the deals will still be here.
Yeah.
And I think they're doing an extension of the beat deals, so people can go to that game, which is massive because I mean that's the main draw on Saturdays for students, right? It's like, oh, let's go to beat, right? But if they're saying, hey, get out, go to the game, come back, we'll still be here, we'll be throwing a party, like. I mean that's exactly what you want to see, and that new student section, I love it. I mean, I love the fact that they were like, everybody who was there got towels. As you're pulling up the tweet, you can see that there are towels on the seats. There's a new beer cart. So hey, if you want beer, go use your parents' declining dollars that they put in your declining dollars account and go get a beer for the Stella Artois cart or a seltzer or whatever you want. But those towels, what I really liked is in the second half when Eastern Michigan was shooting on that side, the student section was up and waving the towels around, right, trying to distract. And Eastern Michigan didn't have a great second half from the free throw line, so call it a coincidence, call it the student section being there and being raucous, and I mean, I loved it. I loved it.
Yeah, we'll talk about it. We talk about it at length. We talked about it during football season with the tailgating and the Greek life stuff, but Miami has a culture here that is, as much as we may try and hide it, as much as we, try and downplay it, Miami is a party school at its core, that like students come here to have a good time. And I think, at least in my opinion, like the atmosphere of the school has been trying to like move away from that. And I think that programs are now like, okay, let's, this is a fun thing for students. Let's not embrace it, but acknowledge it and bring students in a way, like meeting students at what they want to do, which obviously is not a great look as a college, but like if it's creating this atmosphere at games that makes it fun for students to go to, I think it's a win-win.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say enough about the culture change, man. Like I can't say enough about it. It's been so good to like actually feel like students want to come to these games. Like I mean, I hope that there is not a single, I hope on that student section, it's standing room only on Saturday. I really do. And I think the fact that like they're putting a lot of eggs into their basket with this game, but we've seen that like Miami, they play well when they have when they have fans, like when they have energy in the building, they feed off that energy. So like I mean, the crowd went ballistic when Evan Ipsaro, who's one of the shortest guys on the court, volleyball spiked a block against Eastern Michigan. He got that with his elbow.
Yeah.
Shout out Stacey King for that reference. I mean, it's just it's just amazing to see.
Well, while we're talking about it, I know we're going to talk about it later, but while we're on the topic, we discussed off camera, and I guess we'll discuss it now too. We need a name for this student section because this is the first time we've had a dedicated area of the court dedicated to students, or we've had it before, but it's never really had a name, or it's never been like kind of sectioned off. But we have a dedicated bleacher area for students now. We need a name for it. Like we have the Cameron Crazies at Duke. That's the only one that's coming to mind right now, or the Orange Crush at Illinois. Or the Nut House at Ohio State. We need a name for Miami student section. Ted, any ideas for what Miami could go with here for their name of their new student section?
They last year, a group of students, they tried to make the brick wall. I thought that was okay, but again, the culture really wasn't there for it, so the brick wall was okay. What I really like is kind of naming it after the stadium, something like that, like like the Millette Maniacs. I think that would be cool. Obviously, like that would have to change come come
whatever year the new stadium comes.
Yeah, whatever year the new stadium comes. You could do something after Wayne Embry, call it Wayne, call it Wayne's World, like the old TV show. Um, Hell, get Wally Zerbiak on Saturday, call it Wally's World, right? Like, um, it's something that's not necessarily like Red Hawk, like not necessarily something that's like Red Hawk affiliated. I think I think sometimes people try to lean too much into that, but I think naming something after the arena is cool because that's what Cameron Indoor Stadium. That's why they're called the Cameron Crazies, stuff like that. So that's what I'd like to see. I think the Millette Maniacs for a couple of years. I think that would serve them well. One thing I do want to see, at the hockey games, there are chants, right? All this, most of the students should know the chants. And if they don't, that's kind of sad, but kind of describes the state of the hockey team right now. Um, but like we need to do something like I know at Gamble Pavilion, UConn, right? Every student brings a newspaper, and when they're reading the opposing team starting lineups, they all have the newspapers out, and you know they're reading the newspaper while it happens. Or some stadiums they'll have their fans turn around and they'll look elsewhere, so it's just their backs. Something like that, right? Where it brings even more energy. We need more cohesiveness. But Jack, if you had to give him a name, where would you go?
I think you hit the nail on the head with Wally's World. I think we have a major opportunity on Saturday to kind of prolong this engagement with the basketball program that we really haven't seen in years. And I think with Zerbiak coming to town, with Embry coming to town, there's a major opportunity to create a culture at Miami that really hasn't been seen since Zerbiak was on the court. Obviously, Saturday is a huge game. It's a rivalry game, which is big enough on itself. But Miami has done everything in their power to get students to come to games. I mean, we've talked about like the promotions, the brick promotions. They're also offering like free concessions. I think it's like $10 for the first 100 students. They offered like $1,000 to one student every game. And I think right now is the first time in a while that we have momentum to kind of create this culture. I mean, for a lot of students, this is their first impression of the basketball team. This is their first impression of being a student. Like for freshmen, this is the first time that they're around a Miami basketball program. They didn't see the years where we were 12 and 22. They didn't see the years where we were firing head coaches. They didn't see the years where we were sneaking into the MAC tournament. They're seeing a good basketball team. And if you can build off of that and create this engagement with especially the younger classes, and use that to get future classes involved as these younger classes become upperclassmen, you're creating something that can be sustainable for years to come, especially if you move into a new arena. Then the excitement triples, quadruples, and you really have something to build off. So I think I'm hesitant to give it a name because I kind of want it to be something organic.
Yeah.
And have the students make it their own and make it their thing and completely take it over. And I think that would be awesome. As long as it's not like crude or offensive and like a mess, I think it would be really cool to have the students create something completely organic without the school or the program or us, frankly, getting involved. So I think Wally's World, if I had to pick one, would be the one I'd go with. But otherwise, I'm hesitant to give it a name. I want it to be the students' thing. Before we spend too much time talking about Saturday, because we'll get into that in a little bit, I want to talk about the two games that happened while we were in the 2-week break we had. And then at least over the last 5 or 6 days, we have Akron and Eastern Michigan over the last couple of days. The less said about the Akron game, the better. That was kind of for lack of a better term, a punch to the mouth. I think the program kind of got a reality check and kind of there was a lot of momentum going into that game. And I think it was kind of a down to earth moment of like, okay, you're not there yet. But I think that's a loss you needed to kind of get a reality check of some kind.
Yeah, I mean, all I'll say about this game is that regression to the mean is a really cool thing in sports. I think it happened to Miami in that game, and I think it's going to happen in March come MAC tournament time if Miami has to face Akron again. It felt like every shot Akron was taking in that game was, it felt like every shot that they were taking went in. I'm looking up this. I'm looking up the stats right now because I want to see what their first half percentage from three was because it was. I mean, it was okay in the first
in the 60s.
in the first half. They shot 50% from three. They made 10 threes, which is already 30 points. Miami in the first half, um, Miami in the first half shot 23% from three and 32% from the floor.
Yuck.
So, I mean, that first half really killed them, and then in the second half, it was already out of reach at that point. Um, but regression to the mean is a really cool thing, and um, I would like I would like to see a rematch come tournament time. And again, this could just be me, talking smack, but we definitely, didn't give them their best fight. Give Akron the best fight, and I think on neutral ground, it's a much different atmosphere on neutral ground.
Yeah, I was talking to some of the other media members when I was working the women's game on Saturday, which we'll talk about them in a second. But I think like we had joked before the games, like we want this to be a quick game because we want to go back and watch this absolutely crazy game between Akron and Miami. And we looked at the score, and I think it was like 38 to like 11. And we were like, okay, maybe we don't have to rush home. Like this game's kind of over already. And I think Steele said it best in the press conference we were at. Like, I think I don't think the program was ready. Like, I think they'd performed well this year. Don't get me wrong. Like, obviously, you don't get to 6-0 without some really impressive wins. You don't get to 6-0 without a lot of work. But Akron is one of the premier programs in this conference that has gone to the MAC tournament, won the MAC tournament, and gone to the NCAA tournament. They know how to play in these games, and I don't think that the pressure and expectation that was followed with this game is something that a lot of our players had experienced. So obviously, I'm not in that locker room. I'm not in that coaching staff. I can't say like for sure that's what happened. But if I had to take a wild guess, I think that would be like a major contributing factor into why a lot of we just felt flat for a lot of what I was watching. We felt like we were just going through the motions and not being the explosive, free-flowing Miami team that we've come to know this season. And I think a lot of that is due to the fact that when they were faced with that pressure and that expectation, we hadn't really lived through that yet.
Yeah, I mean, you're dead on the money right there. My dad likes to say this a lot about UConn. He's a big UConn fan, but when you start reading into your own hype, that's when things start to go wrong. And Miami was ranked, I think as high as 18 in the mid-major coaches poll. They're ranked 21st right now, so shout out them. But when you start reading your own press and you start reading your own hype, that's when the rail starts to come off the track a little bit. And I mean, there was no heart from the opening tip. There was no heart. A guy like Pete Suter, not to single him out. I don't know if it was just because the whole team was flat, but that's a guy that you see hustling up and down the floor, diving for loose balls. I mean, he was bleeding on Tuesday night. You didn't see the heart from anybody really. And again, I'm not trying to single him out. That's just somebody we think of when we think of heart on this team. There's just no. I mean, I saw more emotion, more energy at Kent State, which was like our first, the first big game that they had to play. I saw more emotion there than I did at Akron, which, maybe it's one of those things where it's like Coach Steele is like, oh man, like, this is my brother's team, right? The best team in the conference, like just hyping it up. And it's like the guys just came out flat. And the hope is that they learn from that and that they can transfer that to the game on Saturday. Because if they come out flat at home, that's going to be tough. But that's why I want students there, so they provide that energy, and make sure that things aren't flat come game time. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Steele had choice words for his team on Saturday. Things that we are obviously not allowed to repeat on this podcast.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, I think the response against Eastern Michigan was about as good as it could be. Obviously, like it wasn't the prettiest game. It was not a blowout win by any means, even though it could have been to start the second half. There was like a 20-point lead that was shrunk down to like I think 2 points at some points. So like not a pretty game. 48 total fouls. So like just I think we were there for like 4.5 hours, or at least it felt like it, because of just every 10 seconds there was a stoppage for a foul call. But this was the response that Steele's team needed to kind of prove like, okay, we are still a good basketball team, even though we didn't have the performance we wanted on Saturday. We are still one of the best teams in this conference. We are still talented enough to go toe-to-toe with everyone in this division. And they showed it. I mean, Eastern Michigan played a really good game, and they gave Miami a real fight, especially towards the end of that second half. And frankly, without the interior presence of guys like Woolfolk and Potter, I think that's probably it could probably go either way. Like that's a 10-point swing on either side of the ball if a couple things go Miami's way or a couple things go Eastern Michigan's way. You already talked about the Ipsaro play. I go back to like the Byers play or the Byers block. There was a couple moments in there where it really felt like, okay, this might be a game that slips away from Miami, which we saw a couple times last year where Miami's in positions to win and like a couple bounces don't go their way, a couple fouls are called here or there, and they drop one. This was a tough game that kind of showed me, at least, that in these games where the pressure's on, there's a lot of emotion, it's a bounce back game, Miami found a way to win. That's without even mentioning the fact that Ian Elmer, their third leading scorer, didn't play. Got ruled out a couple hours before the game, did not feature. Brant Byers had probably one of, not the best, because he's had some great games, but one of his best games in a Miami uniform. He had the best plus minus on the team at 18. He had 3 blocks, 12 points on like 50% shooting. I think he had 4 assists and like 5 rebounds too, if I remember that correctly. Like all around performance for a guy who is playing his 20th ever college basketball game against some of the best players in the conference. So to me, it was just an all around like good win and a great performance that this Miami team really needed going into Saturday.
Yeah, I'll bring up a little bit of negativity, not to be that guy, but then I'll balance it out with some positives. These are just my overall thoughts from this game. Like Coach Steele said, they gotta play a full 40 minutes. They probably played, in my opinion, probably 32 to 34 minutes of that game. So and against the top teams of in this league, you can't do that. You got to play a full 40. Simply put. If they don't play a full 40 against Ohio, they're going to lose that game, plain and simple. And Eastern Michigan, no shot at them. They came in riding really high. Like I think they were like 3-0 or 3-1 in their last 4 games. They beat Ohio. They beat Bowling Green. Like those are 2 really, really good teams in this conference. This is the big thing I do want to point out, which has bugged me a lot. There's got to be less forcing of shots. Look, Miami is really good when they get into their sets, but there are times where players will just put their head down and try to force something. And I don't want to call anyone out, but I saw it a couple times on Tuesday, and it was when the game started to not slip away, but when Eastern Michigan started to mount their comeback. There were a couple shots where I'm like don't take that just to take a shot, right? Mm-hmm. Don't force it, because now you just ruin the flow of the offense. You waste the possession, and now Eastern Michigan gets right back into this game. And it doesn't just happen in the Eastern Michigan. It's happened a lot this season, especially come MAC play. And if that is something that I wish they would cut out, that's it, right? I can live with the fouls, because that's just, I can live with that. I can live with a bad loss. I can't live with the same, I'm going to try a floater when there's I'm going to try a floater when there's 2 people guarding me, and then the 7-footer is right at the hoop, or I'm going to drive into a guy, not look for contact, and try to fall away from a shot when it's not in the offense. That is me on my soapbox. I'm done with that. I'm out of the negativity. But overall, I mean, I really like this game. Antoine Woolfolk, holy crap, man. He said before the game he was getting 20, he was going to get a double-double, and he got 20 and 10, just like Coach Steele wanted him to, and knows that he can do. First career 3 in a Miami uniform. He said in the press conference, as soon as he let it go, he knew it was going in. He did a little Steph Curry run back a little bit. But I mean, yeah, this was a very good game for the Red Hawks. Pete Suter came up clutch per usual. Brant Byers, I mean, he had a block at the rim, and I mean, people forget, like, he's 6'8" with a 7-foot wingspan. He gets up, man. Like he had a dunk. He had a dunk in that game, like a nice throw, nice 2-hand slam. He went up against a bigger defender and wanted to yam it. And I thought he was going to try to. And then he held up, and on his way down, he put up a layup and it went in. And then I wish it had gone in. It would have brought the house down. But Antoine Woolfolk skied for an attempted dunk, and he got fouled. And I mean, I was standing under the basket, and it shook the whole basket when he tried to throw it down.
Yeah, I'm sitting on press row, and again, like on press row, it's like, taboo to have any sort of reaction to like anything going on. You're not really supposed to root for your team. And I think I audibly screamed like, "Oh my God," as Woolfolk went up, because like it kind of came out of nowhere. It was kind of through a tough point in the Miami game, but like there was I think like a 5-minute stretch there where that gym was electric. That gym was rocking, and a lot of it came after that Byers dunk. Like that little backdoor cut he comes off with the left side to get into that space to get those dunks is becoming like a trademark for him now. I think we've seen it like 4 or 5 times in the last couple of games where he comes off that left wing and it's either Potter or Cooper kind of posting up on that high post and finds him on a back door, and he's wide open for that look. That's a great look for Miami's team, and it gives them such a different look. That we've talked about how much they rely on the three-pointer, and we'll get to that. I'll get to that in a second. But when you have those easy looks at the rim, it completely changes how a team has to guard you. One little negative point I want to bring up is we've talked about how Peter Suter's been clutch. Antoine Woolfolk obviously stepped up in a huge way. We haven't really seen the scoring from Kraft that we've come to know in the last couple of games. I was looking at his like box scores the last month. He had 20, 28, and 23 in 3 conference games against Buffalo, Ball State, and Western Michigan. Since then, he's been in the single digits 4 times. He had 13 against Bowling Green, and then he had 3 against NIU and Kent State, and then he had, I think it was 9 and 5 in his last 2 games against Akron and Eastern Michigan. Again, teams are locked in on him. Teams know that he's our number 1 scoring option, so they put a ton of pressure on him, which is fine because Miami has a bunch of other options to score the basketball if Kraft is taken away. But when we get down the stretch into like hopefully March or late February, early March, when you're in the MAC tournament, you're having these crunch time games, you need to find a way to get your leading scorer going. And I think the one drawback that we've seen the last couple of games is when Miami goes into these stretches where they can't find a basket, they haven't been able to create space for their guys like Kraft, their guys like Suter. And outside of Suter being able to create his own shot a couple times with a nasty little step back and a nice crossover move, there wasn't a ton of set plays that gave our guys open looks, which I think is something that I'm not going to say concerns me because they still found a way to win, but is something I'd like to see addressed going forward, is getting our playmakers open looks and open shots to get them going, especially on nights like this where it's like fluidity and rhythm is so hard to come by when there's so many foul calls that getting open looks is a luxury. And I think that's something that Miami really needs to improve on when we go play tougher opponents on the road.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Kraft, as described on the broadcast, looks like he's having the yips a little bit, which sucks because obviously Cam Kraft is so big for this team. He was the guy coming into it. I think he's trying to force it a little bit, right? He's just trying to see that ball go through the hoop. And he's one of those guys who's kind of a microwave in that aspect, is that if he sees it go down once or twice, he'll heat up. But it's like he's not scoring until late in the game. And then by that point, he can't really even heat up. He's already taken 7 shots, right? So I think they need what they need to do is they need to get him some easy looks. He's doing a little too much drive and try to go up for a layup, but not really look for contact to my liking. And again, it's really easy to sit here and be critical. I don't know I don't know what's going on with him. It could just be he's just having a bad stretch of games. But they need to do maybe a little Brant Byers backdoor cut for him, right? Where it's like they get him a screen and he's able to go up and put up a layup, and then they do it again. And then maybe, he fakes a cut and he gets a little flare screen. So he's flaring out to the 3-point line. I've noticed he's developed a bit of a hitch in his shot as of late. He's got one of the most fluid motions on the team. But I think part of it is that he's starting to overthink a little bit, and that's where that hitch has been coming in. And it's been thrown off his rhythm, man. I mean, and I hope we can see the Cam Kraft that we know and love coming up.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that he's had some bad nights, but at the end of the day, like he's still Cam Kraft. If he gets going, he's going to be one of the best scorers on the team. Two more guys I want to talk about before we move on and talk about the women's team are our sophomore point guards. You talked about him in the press conference a ton, and Evan Absaro and Makai Cooper. Huge game for them on Tuesday. Both of them were super effective. I've been banging the drum on Evan Absaro since his freshman year. I think he's going to be a special player, and he showed it on Tuesday night. He hasn't had as much of an opportunity as Cooper has, and that's not to say one's better than the other. It's just how the team's shaked out. But when he gets minutes and when he's on, he's a spark plug. And I mean, Steele said it best. Like, he's a prick. He is a prick on the defensive end. And that Steele said it. That is Coach Steele's words. Those are not my words. That is a direct quote. But yeah, on defense, like on ball, he is a menace. And we saw it. I think he had 2 steals on Tuesday. One of them going the other way for a coast-to-coast layup. He's filthy defensively, and offensively, he's underrated. Like, he is capable of getting a basket. His three-point stroke is there. It hasn't really been on display this season. I think he had 10 points. I think there was a couple games last season too where he had 15 to, I think 18 was his career high. But he is a legitimate force on the off the bench, and especially in games where guys like Kraft aren't hitting shots or getting open looks. You need guys to come off the bench and be a spark plug, create some offense when your starters are sitting. And Ipsaro is a huge part of that.
Yeah, I mean, Ipsaro, his shot has been his actual shot has been kind of up and down as of late, but he's been scoring the ball at a fantastic clip inside the inside the restricted area. And I mean, yeah, like you said, defensively he's just a menace. There's a reason that he is in the closeout lineup, right? It's him, Coop, Pete, Woolfolk, and Ian Elmer. I mean, that's their closeout lineup. Kraft goes to the bench, and that just shows you how much trust that Coach Steele has in Ipsaro, and B, just like how much defense he adds to this team, and adds to that lineup specifically. So I mean, that's huge. And then on the other end of the spectrum, Makai Cooper. He is a guy that I keep talking about. I just have to talk about him because he has grown so much, not only from last season, but even the beginning of this season. Like, I mean, there was at the start of the season, we were a little worried about Coop. We had talked about how it looked like he was still shaking off the rust a little bit. But as of late, my nickname for him has been BSC, Big Shot Coop. I mean, he has just been incredible. I mean, he's been a steady hand. He has been shooting he's been shooting lights out, honestly. And he's there when you need him. And I mean, again, defensively, he's just been really, really good. So yeah, I mean, both of these point guards are just incredible. And then when they're in defensively, it's like fire and ice, man. I mean,
yeah, I'm looking at both of their stats right now, and Cooper, I mean, we've talked about he isn't the pure scorer that guys like Kraft are, but I mean, he's averaging almost 7 points a game on 40% shooting, 38 from 3. He had 32 steals his freshman season. He already has 28. And we've got 15 games to go, ballpark, hopefully. Same story with Ipsaro. I think he had 24 last season. He already has 20 on the season. They're growing defensively. They're growing offensively. They've increased in every single offensive category. Percentages, averages. These guys are growing into being legitimate contributors on a very deep Miami team, which, I mean, they were running the show last year on I'll call it average Miami team. And even with guys coming in to advance this program, they're still being trusted with major minutes and being trusted to get stops and get scores in major minutes against major competitors in their conference. And I think they've grown into being some of the best, if not the best, depth pieces in the conference. So I think they're a huge part of what Miami's trying to do the rest of the way. And if these guys stay hot, then that's 8 or 9 guys in Miami's rotation that can all give you 15 to 20 points a night.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we could go on and on about them. I mean, God, this team is so fun to talk about, right? Like they're just fun.
Yeah.
And like even after a loss, they're still fun to talk about because it's like they still play a really, really good game most of the time. But I mean, yeah, they're just fun, man.
Yeah. Let's completely agree. It's been a fun time to watch them this season. Before we run out of time, let's talk about the women's basketball team. 3 games since our last episode, went 1-2 in those games. Let's start with the Buffalo game. This one was a heartbreaker. I mean, there's no way around it. Coach Box and Ilse DeVries said it in the post game, like they didn't feel like they should have lost this game. I'm inclined to agree. I think it was a 16-0 run to end the game to give Buffalo the win. Miami had won that game. Miami had that game in the bag and then just could not find a way to get a basket or get a stop in the last like 7 minutes of the game. And Buffalo just found a way to rattle off this run to end the game. That's a heartbreaker. Those are losses that, again, like we talked about it the last time we were on the pod. They're not ahead of schedule, but they're performing well from where we expected them to be this season. That's a game where it's like, okay, this is still a work in progress. There's still work that needs to be done.
Yeah, I mean, what did they have? Like 4 MAC wins last year. Like I think they were like 4-12 in the MAC or something like that. They didn't have a great year last year, and now they're sitting. They have how many? I mean, how many MAC wins do they have this year?
I think they have 5 now. They have 4 now. They're 4-5.
Yeah, so they already have matched their win total, and they still got a good chunk of time left to raise that MAC record. Yeah, I mean, you're right. It stung. 16-0 to end the game is a little ludicrous, honestly. Like, but it shows why Buffalo's is the cream of the crop in the MAC for the women's team. But like we said, there's some positives to take from this game. Miami measured up really well against the best team in the MAC, right? Like we said this was the measuring stick game, and then they played really well. Outside of that 16-0 run, but as much as it hurts, there are positives to take away from it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the play-by-play now. With just over 9 minutes to play, Maya Chandler hits a 3 to go up 49-39. 4 minutes later, it's 51-50. So that kind of stuff can't happen in MAC play if you want to be at the top of your conference. Yes, I know it's only year 2 of Coach Box's regime. Yes, I know this is still a team that's trying to figure out their identity. I know it's early on in his process, but that kind of stuff is, I'll say, disheartening. If you're a player, if you're a coach, like that kind of stuff it's a crusher. Like there's no way around it. That kind of stuff, like that is a tough, especially from Buffalo too. That is a tough trip home. That is a long trip to think about.
Yeah.
That. What I will say is they responded really nicely against Akron. That was a really impressive win, especially like we talked about it with the men's team coming off the loss at Akron. There's 2 ways it can go. You can either like sink and like, okay, like maybe we're not as good as we thought we were, like kind of get in your own head and start to doubt if you're good, or you can respond, get off the mat and prove that you're still a really good basketball team. And that's exactly what the women did against Akron. I mean, this was a dominant win. That second quarter, you said it was ludicrous. I think Akron went like 17 minutes without a field goal. It was insane. Like they couldn't buy a basket. Miami's defense was just stifling. And they came back into the game a little bit at the end there, but I have to double check, but I'm pretty sure they went like outside of the first like minute, all of their points came from free throws. I think they had 1 layup and like 13 free throws.
Wow.
And the rest was all Miami on the other end. Like they were dominant offensively, defensively. They shut down everything that Akron was trying to do. This was a really, really impressive win for Coach Box's team.
Yeah, I mean, you said it. 17 minutes without a field goal. Like, I, I didn't even know like Miami's team was capable of that. But that's why they have like the highest scoring defense in the MAC right now. And I mean that's just a dominant win for them, and moving on. Like the other Akron game, not much else to be said. I mean, they're just from the tip to the end, they were dominant. And then that third game was against Kent State. Tough loss. Did not shoot the three ball well. I don't think Ilsa DeVries played. I mean, she might have gotten injured because she only played like 8 minutes. Um, so, and it's not like she had foul trouble. So, I mean, just
Yeah.
tough, just tough.
We'll check in with Coach Box on Saturday about her status. Obviously, we'll see if she's in the lineup or not, and keep everyone posted. But yeah, that is a tough loss. 4-5 in the conference now. Like looking ahead for the rest of the season, like it's an uphill battle. And we've talked about it. That conference is tough. Like the MAC is a tough conference to fight through. Big. I mean, we talked about it during football season. We'll talk about it now. It's OU hate week again. Every time we can hate on OU, we're going to take that chance. It's a rivalry game. It's a chance to respond, and I think it's a huge test for this program.
Yep. I'm doing sideline for the men's game this weekend. They have denied my access to their huddles. So it's OU hate week. You know, as a journalist, my integrity is never to share anything I learn from the huddle directly to the opposing team. So, Ohio, thanks for not trusting my journalism ethics. But hey, there's a reason that there's a reason that it's OU hate week.
That is still crazy to me that like we've talked about this before, but like some teams like believe that sideline reporters are sharing information from huddles to other coaches. That blows my mind.
Look, Eastern Michigan, I get it, right? Eastern Michigan, the same thing, but they specifically told me like that had happened to them.
Yeah.
So I get that completely, right? Whoever that person was deserves to be fired. That is a complete like violation of ethics. But like, look, I know basketball. I love I love basketball. I watch a ton of basketball. I know sets and things like that. But like, if you expect me to remember everything that was put on that board, walk back to my spot, then then the next time they have a huddle, or the next time there's a huddle, walk to Coach Steele and go, hey, there's no point, because then it's like the last possession. It's like, hey, they ran this set. It's like they may not run that again at all.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, we know, like we saw it. Thanks.
Exactly.
Well,
So
and
again,
like outside of that, it's like, what else are you going to tell them? Like their coach said to hustle. Oh, really? Oh, really? Thanks, buddy. Thanks for the genius insight. Like, again, like we talk about, obviously it happened in Eastern Michigan, so more power to them. But it doesn't really make sense. And when I think about it, like, okay, what information can you really derive in that short amount of time? But hey, it happened to him, so I'll hold my tongue.
It's not like I can immediately go to like Steele on the bench and be like, hey, this play they're running, 36. They're running 36 XY ATO, right? It's like,
Yeah.
even if they say that, Steele doesn't know what 36 XY ATO is. like again, it could be a completely different name because they know that, like, oh, there's gonna be a reporter on the sidelines. So it's like, and again, I like my job, so like I like getting paid. Like I don't
Yeah.
want to lose. I don't want to lose my job because I'm like, oh, here's Steele. They coach, the opposing coach. He said get more rebounds.
Mind blowing.
So I don't know. I mean, look, all personal things aside, OU has always had a really good basketball team. Ben Vanderplas comes to mind from a couple of years back. I think he went to Virginia like he transferred to Virginia. I don't know if he's still there. Jason Preston, that Ohio MAC tournament team.
Yeah.
He's a G Leaguer now. It's always been a battle of the bricks rivalry, and I'm so happy that Wally Zerbiak is coming back for this, because I would love for Wally to like go to the student section, get him hyped, get him fired up. So we'll see how it goes. But I'm hoping it'll be more competitive than years past.
Yeah, I mean, we can go on and on about this game. Like, it is going to be rocking at Millette. If all goes as planned, that stadium's going to be packed. The energy is going to be there. I can't wait. I'm so fired up for Saturday. I'm getting hyped up just thinking about it. So, going to be a really fun experience. I'm really excited to be there for that. Before we run out of time, another major piece of Miami news. Miami, we talked about it a couple weeks ago, but Miami has finally disclosed their full transfer class for the 2025 season. I have it up on the screen now. Obviously, we've talked about the names that stick out. We've talked about Coy Beasley. We've talked about DeQuan Finn. But what we haven't talked about is the fact that Miami's added one more name that is not on this list, Deion Colzie from Notre Dame.
Did Peyton Kirkland not sign?
I was going to talk about that too. He was not on the list that was posted by the school, but his most recent post is still his commitment to Miami. So I don't know what's going on there. I don't know if that's like something that still needs to be figured out, but in the official press release on Miami's website, he's not listed. So that's something to keep an eye on.
That would suck.
That would really suck. That's a huge get. Any other names here before I talk about Colzie again that stick out to you before we move on?
Coy Beasley. I really liked him coming out of high school. I looked at his tape. I'm not saying I was a Coy Beasley watcher. He didn't play like at all at Purdue, so I think he's going to get more of an opportunity to shine here, especially now that we lost Ryan Strader. Mitchell Butler is interesting. I only say interesting because he was at Southern Miss and played tight end, then transferred to JUCO, switched to O-line, and now he's kind of back in Division I football. So he's interesting. I don't want to. I won't say anything more than that. Obviously, the big name, DeQuan Finn, QB1. I mean, that is the get of all gets. I mean.
DeQuan Finn is a huge get, and he's going to have weapons to work with. Obviously, we talked about guys like Darian Williamson, Cordell Russell, and Brady Simmons coming in from all Power 5 schools, not to mention Keith Reynolds coming in from Washington. With Deion Colzie coming in from Notre Dame, obviously didn't get a ton of action with the Fighting Irish, but that is 5 new receivers, plus Cam Perry coming back, hopefully, plus a revamped running back room for Finn to work with. That's a lot. That is a lot of weapons, and like probably more than more high level weapons than we've ever really seen for a Miami football team, at least in like the current era.
Yeah, I mean, you want to talk about weapons, you want to talk about whatever. I mean, there is no shortage of on-field explosiveness. The running game is going to be interesting because neither of us really know what is going to happen with that. And maybe they get, like a spring, maybe they get some more spring commitments coming in. And maybe that's what it is. Maybe Kirkland just needs some time to get some grades straightened out for the spring semester. And then coming in the fall camp, he'll be here. That's the hope. And then maybe that happens with, maybe that happens with the running back room, but maybe they just really like what they see in the running back room. I don't know if they signed any running backs.
They did not. At least not in the
no, in the freshman class. I don't know if they have any running.
They got 2 or 3, if I remember correctly.
Let me just look that up. Where was I going with this? Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. They did not sign a running back.
Oh, really?
No. 3 O linemen, 1 tight end, 1 QB, or 3 tight ends, excuse me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 D linemen, 1 linebacker, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 defensive backs. Wow. So
maybe we're just running empty set all season. No running backs.
They must really like who they have on roster then. Actually, I mean, I know we talked about it at some point. But I mean, they're running. Is Kenny Tracy coming back for another year? Do we know?
I think so.
So then maybe that's why they haven't signed anybody because they're like, oh, we got Kenny.
Well, you've got Kenny coming back. You've got Brunson, who can be your third down power back. We've talked about the other guys in that room, but if Tracy's back, I mean, that's at his ceiling. He's an all-MAC player. Obviously,
Yeah.
that's his ceiling, but we don't know where he's actually going to, fall into that category. But yeah, I think Tracy's back for one more year because I mean, he didn't play at all this season, so I think he should retain that year of eligibility.
Yeah. I mean, he would get that medical red shirt here.
Yeah, I mean
And
that's
then Dylan Downing has a redshirt year too, so he could come back. So maybe we just need to shut up because we don't know what we're talking about.
Downing played like every game last season. He can't get his red shirt now, can he?
He didn't play more than 4 games at UNLV his first year there.
So we can. I mean, if we redshirt him this year, we can only use him for 4 games, though, right?
I have no clue.
Yeah, I'm still a little lost on how this whole like redshirt rule works, but
I'm
I
pretty sure. I'm pretty sure you can't you can redshirt somebody if they didn't play more than 4 games in a season, but I don't know if it has to be with the same school.
I don't think it does. I think eligibility is kind of universal.
Well, then maybe that's it. Then maybe they can get a red shirt out of those two guys.
Those are 3 still pretty solid options. Like obviously
Yeah.
they're not as they may not be the ceiling that you could get with like a power 5 running back, but it's a good room.
I mean, hey, Kenny Tracy's great. I mean, we saw what his younger brother Javon was able to do on the edge, and I mean, hell, if he's anything like the Tyrone Tracy, Giants legend right now, even though he's a rookie. If he's anything like that, I mean, I think we got a good. I think we got a good option there at running back. This could be one of the best MAC teams not only one of the best Miami teams. I mean, you want to talk about their schedule next year for a quick sec? They play Wisconsin, who's on a downward trend.
Yep.
They play UNLV, who was good last year, but I don't think they're going to be as good this year. And then they play Rutgers, who's, I mean, again, Rutgers is a Big Ten school. I don't want to put any shade against Rutgers, but it's Rutgers.
Yeah, you're not going to the shoe to play Ohio State. Like this is a game.
I mean, with this team, those are 3 it could be something.
I'm not drinking the Kool-Aid yet. We did this last year. We talked about it. We were like, oh, maybe if we go 3-1 in non-conference, we're looking at a playoff win, and then we went 0-3.
I would drink the Kool-Aid then, Jack.
I'm not drinking the Kool-Aid yet. Well, let me see week 1 first before I start buying into everything yet. Like obviously, like this is gonna be a really good MAC team. This is gonna be a really fun team to watch, but it's still Wisconsin. It's still a really good program. It's still Rutgers, who were put together a really strong year. Like these are still good programs, and obviously Miami's going to be good next year, but it's not like we can, sit here and say like, oh, this is a game that Miami's gonna win. Like it's still January. We got 8 months before we can start thinking about like how we're gonna match up. As you said, like the rosters are still far from being finalized.
So I want to drink the Kool-Aid. I'm going to drink the Kool-Aid a little bit. I'm going to be sipping on it.
It's like a taste test.
A little bit of a taste test. I mean, the hopium is there for sure.
The hopium is there for sure. You know what? I'll buy in on that. I'll join you on the hopium train. Yeah, I think we're just about out of time here. Is there anything else we want to bring up this week before we get on out of here?
This is a buddy of mine, Andrew King, just brought this up to my attention. Travis Steele gets a 17% bonus for winning a national championship.
That seems low.
Yeah.
If you bring a national championship to Miami, I feel like you should get more than just a 17% bonus.
Like such an odd clause in that contract.
Well, it's like, what was it? I don't know if you follow soccer at all, like Anthony Martial when he went to he got like a $50 million bonus for winning the Ballon d'Or.
Or like Spencer Dinwiddie getting $1 for making the NBA Finals.
That was his bonus.
Where I think whenever he signed with like the Mavs or whatever, or like whatever his long-term extension was, he would get $1 if they went to the finals.
Those are some of my favorite like tweets that pop up as like the weird contract clauses. Like my favorite team, Arsenal, Dennis Bergkamp had a clause in his contract when he first signed. He wasn't allowed to fly. He was so afraid of flying, he put it in his contract that he wouldn't have to fly if he signed with Arsenal.
That's like the MJ, like you can't play pickup basketball.
Yeah, same thing. That kind of stuff is so funny to me. Or who was it? I think
It,
someone just came out on from like Denver said like if you're on the Broncos, you're not allowed to ski or something.
I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah, like I mean, again, like injury wise, it makes total sense, but still just like funny that you have to like put that kind of provision in a contract.
Yeah, but I mean, hey, I would like to see that 17% bonus activate. So,
I was about to say that's probably the best 17% Miami would ever pay if
oh,
that
100%.
comes to fruition. Again, like as much as we would love that for that to happen, that a lot has to go right for that to happen.
Cinderella team, baby. Let's go.
Hey, we're partying like it's 1999. We're going to March. It's gonna happen. Calling it now. That'll be my
That'd be great.
That's my bombshell to end this week on. But on that note, it is the end of our time here this week. Once again, this has been an episode of Red Bick Recap. We will see you next week at the same bad time, same bad channel. Hopefully, with a 2-0 record against OU this season in basketball. Ted, any last words?
Oh, you hate week, baby.
OU hate week. That's right. Amen to that. Well, on that note, we will see you all next week. Have a lovely weekend and go Miami.